What is going on? Welcome back to another episode of the Podium Pushers podcast with Justin and Brandon. The Belgian Grand Prix is officially in the books. Spa is always one of the most beautiful tracks on the calendar. A dominant weekend from McLaren. Had to bust out the McLaren jersey for talking about it. Brandon, how you feeling?
I'm feeling good. It was a good weekend overall. It was an interesting Sunday, but we got to see cars on track, and there was definitely some good racing that happened in Spa. We had weather involved, so no complaints here.
Always weather in Spa. I complained about the sprint race before it even started, and maybe that was the better race of the weekend, so that's just what I get for complaining about it. There's lots to talk about, even though it may not have been the best race of the year, so let's jump right into it with my one-sentence rundown from the Belgian Grand Prix. A dry, beautiful, slow burn of a race. Now, I put a lot of adjectives in this one. Dry, because we waited way too long to start this race. I understand Spa, one of the more dangerous tracks on the calendars, and I'm all for being cautious with the drivers and prioritizing their safety. But when you have the majority of the grid saying it's time for us to go racing, we probably could have gone racing sooner, and I would have loved to see a standing start. Beautiful, because Spa is a gorgeous track, and even though we may not have had the most, overtakes we've ever seen in a race, maybe it was a little boring strategy-wise, it's still beautiful. It's historic. I love seeing cars race there. And then slow, because there was a build-up to maybe a fight for the lead at the end that never really happened. So we were left wanting some things after this weekend, but all in all, I still enjoyed the race at Spa, and I can't complain about it.
Yeah, I think it was a good race, and I think one thing in particular that you just mentioned was I was really waiting for a battle for the lead at the end, and really felt like the commentators were talking about the battle that was going on, and I was watching it, and I was like, I really don't feel like there's a battle going on. I mean, we've got like a 4-second gap between Lando and Oscar right now. I don't know that I would call that a tight battle, but it was a great race nonetheless. Yeah.
Well, it was building towards a battle, and maybe it should have been a battle if there wasn't some mistakes from Lando Norris and the McLaren pit crew throughout the Grand Prix, but I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit more later. Before we get to that, what is your one-sentence rundown from the Belgian Grand Prix?
My one sentence rundown is we had to wait for it for the race itself, and was it worth the wait? I think it was. It was a good race. We saw some great driving from Lewis Hamilton. Gained like 11 positions. It would have been amazing to see him qualify like in Q2 or something, and maybe he would be on the podium. But yeah, we saw a lot of good racing, some good overtakes. Oscar made the pass for the lead on lap 1. That was awesome to watch. A little bit of strategy with the crossover. Lewis Hamilton and Ferrari got that one right, which is crazy. Yuki Tsunoda lost quite a few positions, which is also crazy. Not the day Yuki wanted, but great qualifying from him. So that's a positive.
Yeah, this was one of those weekends that felt like the high moments of the weekend were great. Like we had a dry start, there was a crossover period. You see Lewis charge through the field, you had different race and sprint winners. And so the things that we saw on track that were high moments of the weekend were incredible. And then the rest of the weekend is just kind of boring, not a lot of overtakes, cars finishing where they qualify. So the high moments were super high, but the low moments from this weekend maybe leaving a bit of a sour taste in some people's mouths.
Yeah, I agree. And, it kind of reminded me as we were sitting in the rain delay, I was like, man, this is reminding me of the rained out race in Spa a few years back. Didn't want another situation like that, but we do have some rules set in place now because of that race to kind of prevent things like that from happening, or at least clarify the points that are scored. But fortunately, it was a great race. So
Yeah, I
didn't have
mean,
to
you
worry
got to
about
feel
it.
bad for the fans at Spa. Could you imagine being someone who was at the 2021 race, being like, that's fine, I'm giving it another shot. They show up to 2025 and it's raining again, massive delay. Like, it's insane. They sit through the rain. It's incredible. makes me want to have some rain this year in Austin. Not too much rain that we have a delay, but who knows? We've never seen cars on track in the wet. I'd love to see that. Shout out to the fans at Spa for toughing it out. We've been kind of skirting around the issue, but we have to talk about the track itself. Spa-Francorchamps, a beautiful track, a historic track, one of the best visual tracks on the calendar. Love seeing cars go around the circuit. But when faced with reality, we have to understand that it hasn't been a great race the past couple of years. There's been drama around it that has made it seem like it has been a good race. George Russell getting disqualified, the weather this year. But when you go look back at it, it hasn't been great racing. They shortened the DRS zone last year, and maybe that, has hindered overtaking. But then on the other side of it, if they made it even longer, you'd have people complaining about how it's so easy to just fly by on the Kimmel Straight. In my mind, I don't think it's the track. It's got to be the cars. These cars are incredibly hard to follow. They're too big. They're too wide. Absolute boats on these tracks. They can't run in the full wets. We saw everything wrong with this regulation set this weekend. So I know we're probably going to rotate Spa here on out, but I don't think Spa is completely to blame. I truly do think it's this set of regulations. And as much as me at the beginning of the year would be shocked to hear me say this because I was so excited for the title fight, I'm ready to see these regulations go.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think when you look at a track that's been involved in Formula One for decades and seen just so many different Formula One cars, you can't look at the track now and be like, yeah, the track's just horrible. Like, if it was horrible, it wouldn't have been, on the calendar for like the last 50 years, right? So I think I totally agree. I think it's got to do more with the cars, and I do think that rotating Spa will help kind of make people more excited for it because it's happening less often. Um, I would like to see it every year personally because I love the track. It's beautiful. And the cars are getting ever so slightly smaller next year with the new regulations, so I think that'll definitely help with racing at these more historic tracks. But yeah.
But I mean, even the fact that they're not getting that much smaller, like we talk about a Monaco, we want them to get smaller, and yes, them getting this much smaller, I think it's like the size of a banana next year, isn't gonna help at Monaco. But here, if they can just follow through the second sector, the track is fixed because then you're behind them in the third sector where you're getting back up to high speeds. You see more moves into the bus stop. Maybe you're setting up more moves off the into turn one with a shorter DRS zone before you go into Eau Rouge. Like, if you could just follow better through that second sector, you fix this track. I don't think it's the size of the cars. It's just this regulation has gone from being heralded to fixing the dirty air problem when it started in 2022 to you cannot follow within like 3 seconds without being affected by dirty air here in 2025. So if they just fix that, I feel like we see Spa return to the glory days that we've all seen it have with the highlights from the 90s and early 2000s whenever we show up on F1 TV. So, I mean, and I don't want to, like, I'm excited to see these regulations go, but I'm also very nervous for next year's regulations because we've heard so many bad things about them that they're going to make the cars slow. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's the solution is that if they're going around at 135 miles an hour because the regulations are horrible, surely they can follow then, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, there seems to be better following in F2 and F3, and if we're going at those speeds, then probably it'll be better following.
Man, we have got to be in a horrible spot if we're saying we want Formula One to be more like Formula 3. What the heck happened at Spa this weekend? I'll tell you what happened this weekend. Oscar Piastri extended his championship lead in both races. We took a couple weeks off. It's time. It's back. The weekly championship recap with the Podium Pushers. As I mentioned, Oscar Piastri grows his lead in the sprint race only by 1 point, but wins the Grand Prix over Lando Norris, so he adds 8 points to his championship lead. It now means that there's a little bit more breathing room, but it is still incredibly tight. But this doesn't feel like one of those weekends where Lando Norris is going to get in his own head and absolutely lose all of his momentum. Sure, he made a couple mistakes. He locked up twice, went wide. McLaren kind of messed up his pit stop. Well, they did mess up his pit stop. It was pretty slow. And maybe messed up his strategy as well. So he made a couple mistakes. He left some time on the table, and maybe that could have helped him fight for the lead. Maybe. But all in all, he he fought back through the weekend, took pole from Oscar in qualifying when Oscar looked like he was dominant over one lap when it was practice and the sprint race qualifying. So that's got to boost his confidence. And this isn't one of Lando Norris's best tracks. If you look back at his history at Spa, this was his first podium at Spa since he's been in the sport. So you could argue that it's still anyone's game. Maybe Oscar claims a little bit of the momentum, but I still think it's wide open, even with Oscar extending his lead.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I don't think this was a bad weekend from Lando, and I think we are seeing Lando kind of a more mature approach from Lando when he has weekends that maybe don't go quite the way he wants them to. He isn't quite as down on himself. I mean, we were talking earlier this year and last year, like Lando just dogs on himself like no other driver on the grid. And you know, I don't really see as much of that from him anymore. So I don't think this was a bad weekend from Lando. Oscar maybe has a little bit more momentum, like you just said, but I think it's anyone's game. I'm excited to see after the summer break, where does this championship fight go? We've got a lot of great tracks, so it's gonna be great.
Hey, we have got one more race before the summer break. We could be going in with an even tighter championship lead. This is the track where we had the first moment of Oscar and Lando drama last year. So who knows what could go down in Hungary. I was going to say the exact same thing as you. I watched Lando Norris's post-race interview after the Grand Prix yesterday, and he seemed much less hard on himself. He was talking and he was like, we'll review it. We probably made some mistakes. I did, the team did. We'll talk about it. Win probably wasn't on. Still a good weekend. I'm happy with it. And so I think him having that mentality, I was like, let's go, Lando. Good job. Like, yeah, you maybe did mess up a little bit. The team did. Own it. Move on. Don't kill yourself about it. It's going to be okay. Like, I saw that and I was like, let's go, Lando. I'm happy for you. And so hopefully having that good momentum to finish out the first half of the season, going to the summer break on a high, will be good for him, will be good for us as fans because it could mean an even better championship fight.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I was thinking like that's the kind of approach that Max has to like a quote unquote poor weekend, like a P2 finish where maybe he could have won. It's like, yeah, probably messed some things up, but you know what? Moving on to the next race. That's our focus. So great job from Lando. Love
Yeah,
to see it.
happy to see that for sure. I'll tell you who was happy, maybe Ferrari this weekend. Charles Leclerc brings home a podium. Lewis Hamilton has an incredible recovery drive on Sunday. Is Ferrari going in the right direction? Here's something that didn't make sense to me. They bring upgrades to a weekend where there's only one practice session. Classic Ferrari. Who knows if that played a role in Lewis Hamilton's qualifying woes this weekend? Charles looks pretty much on it from the start, ends up getting a P3 in the race. Incredible job keeping Max Verstappen behind him, especially in the wet and before the crossover period. I thought that was a very strong performance from Charles Leclerc. Lewis Hamilton finally has a good strategy with Ferrari. Whomst amongst us would have thought we would live to see the day where Ferrari does something right in the wet? That was crazy. We're here celebrating a Lewis Hamilton P7 like he just won the Drivers' World Championship, but it was a step in the right direction for them as a team, it felt like. So it feels like Ferrari finally had a weekend where maybe they maximized what they had on a Sunday, putting things in the right directions, and that fight for P2 in the Constructors' Championship is looking pretty tasty between them and Mercedes. So if you were to pick right now, which one of those two teams is going to finish in P2 in the Constructors' Championship?
I couldn't pick, but
You
if
have
I
to
have
pick.
to
That's what we
pick,
do on this podcast. You have to pick.
if I have to pick, I think I'm gonna go with Ferrari. I think they're trending in the right direction, and maybe this is just wishful thinking because I predicted them to win the Constructors' Championship at the beginning of the season before the season even kicked off. But I mean, they're trending in the right direction. Mercedes seems a little kind of just, you know, discombobulated at the moment. They're kind of coming off rumors cooling down of Max to Mercedes in 2026. That probably caused some tension in the team. I mean, I can't imagine that if you're George Russell or Kimi Antonelli, the idea of getting replaced at a team which both of you have given so much to and they have invested so much in you, would feel good. Um, and Mercedes didn't have a great weekend this weekend, but Ferrari did, trending in the right direction. I think, a good weekend as a team is definitely something that they needed. So all signs point to Ferrari. So that's what I'm going with.
Yeah, I would also pick Ferrari to finish P2 in the constructor standings right now. Mercedes didn't have a great weekend this weekend, even though both of us thought that they might have based on what we saw last year. George Russell was visibly mystified on where the pace was. That's pretty much all he talked about in his post-race interviews this weekend was just not understanding where the pace was. Kimi Antonelli had a pretty poor weekend. I know he's a rookie and still working some things out, but he was like the third best rookie this weekend in what should have been the best of the rookie cars. And so, not a great weekend for Mercedes. Obviously, there's still only 28 points in it. And so, one weekend is not going to decide P2 in the constructor standings. But right now, all signs are pointing to Ferrari finishing in P2. You are correct. We've got to talk about Red Bull because theoretically, maybe somehow they could find their way in this P2 fight as well, because it kind of looks like they're a two-car team again. Is Red Bull once again operating as a normal Formula One team? Yuki was given some upgrades from Max's reserve. Immediately, he's more on the pace. Yes, Max kind of makes a mistake in his last qualifying lap. Maybe that flatters Yuki a little bit. But either way, Yuki's in Q3 having his best start with the team since he joined. So you can't fault that, even if the gap to Max was still a little big. Unfortunately, it all fell apart on Sunday due to a strategy mishap. But if you had to say, Sunday aside, do you think Yuki Tsunoda is moving in the right direction?
I certainly think Yuki's moving in the right direction. I wouldn't say that Red Bull is like, back to normal operations yet because again, Yuki didn't score any points on Sunday. So, I mean, that's where it counts. You have to score points on Sunday. And for Red Bull to be fully operating like a normal Formula One team, that's what needs to happen. And it did not happen. So I think Yuki's moving in the right direction. I definitely don't think he's there yet, but it was really good to see him get into Q3, have a great start. He seemed pretty confident in his post qualifying interviews and all that stuff. That was good to see. Love it when Yuki is positive. So yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, surely if it was a dry race, he probably finishes P7 or P8 and scores some points. Like, it's just the way that it went that Max pitted a lap later than the first group of midfield cars did to cover all of them off. And then Yuki pits the lap after Max because he's the second Red Bull. And so it's just by nature of how that unfolded that Yuki was kind of on the fringe of that midfield cluster and then ends up getting overtaken by some. Should he have been able to pass them? Maybe. I don't know. We don't know if he had a similar wet setup to Max. And so I feel like if it was dry, Yuki brings home some points, maybe has his best Red Bull finish ever. And then we'd be praising Yuki and saying that he had a great weekend, things moving in the right direction. So I think if all things are normal next weekend, not a sprint weekend, has 3 practice sessions with these upgrades that he just received, I wouldn't be surprised if we're talking this time next week and we've seen Yuki score some points, get some more confidence going into the summer break.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I do think they're moving in the right direction, and we'll. I'm just hesitant to commit to that idea until I see the results coming in. But
I don't know. We've been burned too many times over the past 3 years by the Red Bull second driver where we'd be like, finally, they're getting it together. Look at this, a P5. And then the next 3 weekends, they crash out in Q2. And that's just the way it goes. So we will wait and see. But I think both of us share a cautious optimism out of Yuki Tsunoda in the way that he's moving. Before we recap our predictions, we've got to put the Belgian Grand Prix on the push and scale. I'm giving it a 6 out of 10. Not the best weekend, not the worst, slightly above halfway. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. I enjoyed it, but I do think there was some stuff left on the table this weekend.
I'm gonna agree with that. I'm going 6 out of 10 as well. When looking at the weekend as a whole, I think the qualifying sessions were great. I think the sprint was an above average sprint. It was a good sprint, and then the race was just kind of wonky. So 6 out of 10 feels right. Slightly better than average, but the race maybe pulled that down a little bit. But it was overall very good.
Yeah, if we start the race like 20 minutes earlier, we're both probably giving it at least an 8 out of 10. The crossover's happening later in the race. They've got to drive more in the wet. Maybe we see a driver go off. It could be better. The fans gave it a 7 out of 10, 38%, 7 out of 10, 36% voted 6 out of 10. So very close, right in there. They pretty much agree with us. Our predictions going into the weekend, it was 29-29. Driver of the weekend, I said George Russell, which I was feeling great about until he decided to absolutely get smacked around in sprint qualifying, not score any points, and finish middle of the road P5 on Sunday. I can't claim that. No point for me.
And I said Kimi Antonelli. He had a similar weekend. His Sunday just really seemed all over the place. But yeah, not a great weekend from Kimi. We kind of already mentioned that earlier, but definitely don't get the point there.
Yeah. Backmarker of the weekend, I went with Nico Hulkenberg. Nothing notable about his weekend, but nothing was horrible about it either. He wasn't involved in any incidents. Kind of just a middle of the road weekend. Not great, but not bad enough to get backmarker of the weekend.
Yeah, kind of a similar situation. I went with Ollie Behrman. Ollie didn't, I think, do a ton of great things, but well, I mean, he did qualify in Q3
For the sprint.
for sprint, which was good. So that kind of maybe pulls him out of the back marker, but his Sunday was kind of just middle of the road as well. So
Yeah, P11 Merchant, Ollie Behrman. I think he was 4/10 behind Pierre Gasly at the line. So just good old middle of the road average weekends for both our backmarker predictions. Sprint poll, I went with Oscar Piastri, which was correct.
and I went with Charles Leclerc, which was incorrect. I don't know what I was thinking, but just blind optimism.
Yeah, we went into the weekend with He got a podium, so there was some reason for Ferrari optimism, but I think we should just probably realize that McLaren's not getting beat in a straight line anytime soon. Sprint winner predictions. I went with Oscar Piastri, which was incorrect.
And I also went with Oscar Piastri, which was incorrect. It was looking great after qualifying, but not didn't
Hey,
finish
I've
well.
I've never been happier about being incorrect about a sprint winner prediction because that overtake from Max Verstappen, holding them off for 15 laps. I was on the edge of my seat, and I'm sure Max Verstappen was too. It was like you said, it was a good sprint for sprint standards. Pole predictions, I went with George Russell, which I was not feeling great about immediately this weekend. It was incorrect.
And I went with Lando Norris, which was correct.
Yeah, great prediction there from you. P3, I said Lando Norris, which was incorrect.
P3, I said George Russell, which was incorrect.
I said George Russell in P2, which was incorrect.
And I said Oscar Piastri in P2, which was incorrect.
P1, I said Oscar Piastri, which was correct.
And I said Lando Norris P1, which was incorrect.
Not a great podium predictions from us this weekend. One pushing prediction. I said someone gets stuck in the gravel of the course of the weekend. I'm so upset that I'm not getting this point because it felt like everyone and their mother, who we saw on the TV feed 7 million times this weekend, was taking a trip through the gravel. I thought surely, right off the rip, Ollie Behrman goes off in FP1. I thought he was getting stuck. He didn't. I thought Kimi was getting stuck in qualifying. He didn't. Everyone was taking trips through the gravel. No one gets stuck. I don't get this point. I'm sad about it.
Yeah, honestly, I thought it was pretty wild that nobody actually got stuck in the gravel. But you know what? I'll take it. My one pushing prediction was that the order of the top five in the sprint is completely different than the top five in the race, and that did happen. So love to see the variety in finishing position. So that was awesome.
Yeah, solid prediction from you. As soon as Esteban Ocon got fifth in the sprint, I knew this prediction was a lock. I said, there's no way Max is winning this race. There's no way Esteban's finishing P5 again. So that was a great prediction from you there. The fans at X Gaslight, 2 DNFs and Hamilton's first Ferrari podium. That was incorrect. At #_1260, Max takes pole and Oscar wins the race. Almost the opposite of that happened in the sprint, but that is incorrect as well. And at Nickelodeon ____ Colapinto podium after 10 plus DNFs in the race. We had 2 DNF predictions this weekend, and none happened during the Grand Prix. So unfortunately, the fans are all incorrect this weekend.
Yeah, tough weekend from the fans. But you know what? That's all right.
Yeah, though there will be another chance this week because the Hungarian Grand Prix is upon us. So be sure to head over to our social medias if you want your predictions included in our next episode. After this week, it is still all tied at 31-31. We are heading into the summer break as close as it could get. We've got quite the championship battle on track and off track, and I'm loving it.
That's fantastic. I was hoping to get a couple more right, but you know what? I'll take the tie going into next weekend. We've got more points on the table, so I'm pumped.
I am pumped as well. That is all we've got for our recap of the Belgian Grand Prix. Before we get out of here, Brandon, what are your parting podium thoughts?
I'm excited for Hungary. We've got a doubleheader to end this first half of the season going into the summer break. I'm excited for more cars on track. It's going to be great. And then we'll have a sad little break for the month of August, but we'll be right back into it going into the fall. And we'll have plenty of content throughout the summer break for you guys. So
yeah, we'll be sad because there's no cars on track, but the Podium Pushers will still be on YouTube. Don't you worry about that. We are not going anywhere over the summer break, that's for sure. As always, thank you for watching or listening to another episode of the Podium Pushers podcast. It means the world that you let us talk to you about Formula One. Before you go, be sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment, do all of the things. We will see you later this week to predict the Hungarian Grand Prix. But until then, have a great day and God bless.
see ya.